Good evening and welcome in to this live forum of the candidates for the Johnson City Board of Commissioners. My name is Josh Smith with News Channel 11 WJHL TV, and we want to welcome in our viewers who are watching us live tonight on WJHL.com and also streaming on the WJHL Facebook page. The purpose of this forum tonight is to give you, the voters of Johnson City, and the voters of this region, really, a chance to better know the people who have stood up and said, I'm willing to serve on the Board of Commissioners for the City of Johnson City. As many of you know, this is a very important board of individuals. These are people who really are at the top posts of leadership for the city. And on a daily basis, things they decide have a direct impact on the people who live in this city. And it's in that spirit that the Johnson City Washington County Chamber of Commerce and News Channel 11 tonight are partnering to try to give you an opportunity in these unprecedented times to better know who are those people who are on the ballot. There are, in fact, 8 of them tonight, and that's going to be an effort in itself to make sure that you get to know them. So we've done our best here this evening. We are in a room, if you're watching at home and wondering, where masks are, of course, encouraged, but we've socially distanced to the point to give the candidates really the security to know that we've done a good measure to try to give them space between one another. You'll see that if you haven't already coming up in just a few moments. We are here in a room with just some invited guests of the candidates, no general admission to the public. The reason to reduce crowd size, that's why we're streaming it for you here at home. So, the candidates have been briefed on the rules and they know the purpose, which is to inform you, the voter, and we're going to do that in a series of questions. Candidates will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to introduce themselves, and then off we'll go. We'll have 8 questions. I will ask those questions and all the candidates will have a chance to answer them one at a time. Candidates drew cards about an hour ago to determine who would sit where, and that's determined the order of our questions tonight. I'm going to ask questions starting off, moving in this room from my left to right, and then at some point about halfway through we're going to switch and go in the other direction. The candidates didn't know that until now. This gives them all a chance to be able to answer the questions first. And I know they're all dying to have that opportunity and be the first to have to answer my questions. Speaking of the questions, they've been crafted by the Chamber of Commerce and in cooperation with the editorial board for News Channel 11. And we believe that these are just simple questions that speak to the heart of key issues facing the city of Johnson City. Candidates will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer each question. And candidates, you're going to find 1 minute 15 is a long time at a red light, but it's not a lot of time when you're answering questions at a candidates forum. In fact, some of these issues, you could speak for an hour on some of them by yourself. You have 1 minute 15. Now, to help us with this, we do have a timekeeper here in the room tonight, and that timekeeper is Mr. Steve Darden. He's a member of the Chamber of Commerce, the Government Relations Council. He's a former city commissioner. He's been a mayor, so he's been where you are at one point, and so he's going to help us with timekeeping. You will get a 15, which is yellow. That means you have 15 seconds to wrap, and you'll get a red card, which means your time is up. And that's about it by way of the rules. The candidates have been briefed on all of those. I want to introduce the candidates right now who are here and help you get to know them, and then we'll go to opening statements. But a welcome to Alana Norwood, to Jeff Clark, to Debbie Harley Mccloskey, to Joe Wise, to Kyle Beagle, to Todd Fowler, and to Attorney Williams, and also thank you to Mr. Aaron Murphy. I know, but my glasses are off because of the fog. So Aaron Murphy, welcome. I've only interviewed you about 150 times, but I saw your name tag at a distance and freaked out for a second.
I think it was 300 times.
300 times, for sure. Aaron Murphy, welcome to you. And so thank you. We'll begin with the questions now, and we are going to begin with Alana Norwood. Candidates, are you ready? Here we go. 1 minute, 15 seconds, and here's the first question.
Do we do intros?
Forgive me. Here's your
I was
opening
ready.
statement.
You're fine.
You'll do whatever. Thank you. Alana Norwood, your opening statement in 1 minute, 15 seconds. Go ahead.
As Josh stated, my name's Alana Norwood. I'm 22 years old, and I've decided to embark on running for Johnson City Commission. It was no easy decision for me, and I don't take this position lightly. I studied peace and social justice at Berea College, where I acquired my undergraduate. And through my studies, I realized that local politics is a lot more important than people give it credit for. And as I finished my degree here in Johnson City, virtually due to COVID, I got involved with the Black Lives Matter protests and activism downtown. And I quickly realized that demonstrating is only a small portion of creating a larger change in the community. And so that was the moment I decided, you know, I have to run and I have to take this very seriously so we can make a real effort to create tangible change in the community, not just for Black people, but for poor people and anybody that needs a helping hand. I'm here and ready to serve, regardless of the outcome of these results. But I'm confident that I will be the next city commissioner. Thank you. I'm Alana Norwood.
Alana, thank you. Opening statement, Jeff Clark, you have a minute, 15 seconds.
Yeah, first I want to thank those who have put tonight's forum together and to all of you who are watching from home. I come here today not as a politician nor a businessman seeking personal gain. Rather, I come here as a regular person just like you, a working class guy who grew up no different than the majority of the citizens of our great city. I decided to run for office because I see a real problem with how this city has been run. Our elected leadership has failed all of our city's working class residents. Instead of showing compassion and helping those who need it most, our city commission has used their office to create a pro-wealth agenda that only helps those at the top and gives scraps to those at the bottom. Now, they may defend their actions, saying that their pro-wealth agenda trickles benefits down to people like you and me. However, the facts are just not on their side. With 15% of our city's households under the federal poverty line and another 38% falling under the ALICE category, which means they live above the poverty line but don't make enough money to afford the cost of living. How can our commission say that they care about our city's residents? I believe that they can do better for the people of Johnson City. I am running for this office because I believe a pro-people agenda is what this city needs, and that's how I plan to govern. Thank you.
Jeff Clark, thank you. Debbie Harley Mccloskey.
I'm Debbie Harley Mccloskey, and I'm running for the Johnson City Commission. In the last 36 years, I've made Johnson City my home, raised my family here, taught at East Tennessee State University, and my family owns a small business here. I am a commissioner who will focus on people come first. With that kind of focus, I believe that real progress can be made with citizen-led boards, diverse citizen-led boards. When we have input from active citizens, we create goals that we can then incorporate into the city's strategic plan and city department offices' goals. We then need to take those plans and communicate our progress back to you, the voters. That's a good strategic planning process and one that also includes action. I encourage you to be a part of this change, and I want to be your city commissioner.
Debbie Harley Mccloskey, thank you. And now to Joe Wise, 1 minute, 15 seconds.
Thank you, Josh. My name is Joe Wise, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the Chamber. I'm here because 7 years ago I was called upon to serve on the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission, and during that time of service, served 2 years as its chair, was later elected to the Washington County Commission, and over the last 4 years served on our City Commission. During this 4 years on the City Commission, I've gotten to be a part of making significant and sustained investments in things like water and sewer, new roads and new schools, public amenities like King Commons and Tannery Knobs and the Langston Cultural Center. And I mention all of those projects because during that same time we've passed 4 balanced budgets without need of a property tax increase while paying off millions of dollars of general fund indebtedness. Personally, my wife and I and our family are active at the Grandview Christian Church. We have 3 kids in school in Johnson City, from elementary to middle school to high school. Also a small business owner and generally active in our community. I'm running because I care about where I live and I care about my neighbors, and I'm asking for your vote.
Joe Wise, thank you. Now Kyle Beagle, 1 minute, 15 seconds.
Thank you. My name's Kyle Beagle, and as Gandhi once said, you must be the change you want to see in this world. And when I look at the state of our country and our city right now and see the so-called people who are representing us, I don't see leaders who strive to be that change. Today is not the day that we stand idle and wait for those leaders to hear us. Today is the day we stand up and make the change happen ourselves. This is why I'm running for the Johnson City Commission. I believe it's here that we create a wave of progression that we want to see in our nation. We start locally and we build up from there. All too often, our representatives underestimate our generation's capability of being the leaders our city and our country needs. They refuse to acknowledge the social, economic, and political disadvantages that impact our generation. So I'm here to say that I am running to break that disconnect between the generation leading us and our generation coming up. Thank you, and again, I'm Kyle Beagle.
Kyle Beagle, thank you. Dr. Todd Fowler.
Hi, I'm Todd Fowler. I'm first a Christian, second a husband of 34 years, father of 5, including an adopted son from Liberia. I am a physician at Watauga Orthopedics. I am the team physician for Science Hill High School, Milligan College, Tusculum College, and have been for Johnson City Cardinals and Elizabethton Twins. We'll see what those teams are next. I've been a resident of Johnson City for 27 years, been a city commissioner for the last 4 years. I've served on the FCA board for Fellowship of Christian Athletes for years, was president and a current member of the Johnson City Morning Rotary Club. And our motto is service above self, and I was taught that by my parents and continue to try and emulate that in everything I do. I care about Johnson City and all of its residents and this whole beautiful region that we live in. And I am running for re-election to continue to make Johnson City an even better place to live than it is now, and to encourage my children to come back and live here so I don't have to move away where they are and where hopefully my grandchildren are someday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fowler. Dr. Tony Williams, a minute, 15 seconds.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I would like to thank the Chamber and WJHL for sponsoring this event. I would particularly like to thank Josh Smith for his experienced leadership. I'm Dr. Tony Williams. I'm a physician practicing medicine in Johnson City for the last 33 years. I'm the founder and medical director of a multidisciplinary pain practice that involves 5 physicians, nurse practitioners, 2 clinical psychologists, acupuncturists, physical therapy, some complicated medical practice with 55 employees. I'm very used to budgets and planning and quality assurance and dealing with personnel, all of which I think are required on the city commission. I'm also a member of the Tennessee Medical Association, and I serve on their legislative committee. So we look at all the bills that are coming before the legislature that may impact the quality of life for citizens in the state of Tennessee. We attend Boone Street Christian Church, although I have to confess my wife Carrie is a little bit better in her attendance than I am. Lastly, I'm an active board member of the Washington County Humane Society. Carrie is a cat girl, and I'm afraid I'm a dog man. And I'm running for the city commission because I love Johnson City and I want to continue its good care.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And Aaron Murphy.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron T. Murphy. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, Bob. I want to thank the WJHL Channel 11 family. Thank you all for hosting this event. I'm blessed and honored to be here today. I didn't see myself here over 15 years ago, but I did see myself here a couple years ago. I've worked hard to prepare myself for today and this season to serve our city. 6 years I've traveled around the country to build new construction, hospitals. I've led over $94 million of new construction in 6 states. I've prayerfully answered the call to go into nonprofit ministry, and so I'm leading one of the largest nonprofits here in our region. I've led over 800,000 homeless prevention cases. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm a friend. And I understand there's a lot of political, social, economic tension within our country, and I want to help bring unity and share my experience here in our city. Thank you.
Aaron T. Murphy, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And thank you to the candidates for your time answering these with the opening statements now. And now we're going to move to answering questions. Again, these are questions prepared ahead of time in cooperation between the Chamber of Commerce and the Johnson City, Washington County Chamber of Commerce and News Channel 11. Now we want to begin with Alana Norwood. You are going to be our first to answer the first question. And the first question is this: what issue would be your top priority as a city commissioner in Johnson City, and how would you address it? You have 1 minute, 15 seconds.
So as Johnson City Commissioner, my first priority would be to address our post-pandemic recovery plan. And for me, that looks like assessing any delinquent property taxes and extending a helping hand. So as a commissioner, we have the ability to offer semi-annual repayments. And I think with struggling homeowners, that would be something that we could realistically help them with, as well as having the ability to set water rates and prices and things of that nature. I think if we reassess and if people need help paying their water bills or need extensions on their bills, that would be something that we should be able to provide during our post-pandemic recovery efforts.
Alana Norwood, thank you. The question again, what issue would be your top priority as a city commissioner, and how, as a city commissioner, if elected, would you address it? Jeff Clark, 1:15.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. My first issue is to make certain that as a city commissioner, I am bringing the issues of the working class to the commission. A lot of times, a lot of policy ordinances that are brought forth to the commission are based in our great business leadership, like here at the chamber, but not too often do they come from the employees directly. And with post-pandemic response, as Alana mentioned, that will come more caring about the employees than the employers. And so that would be what I would want to do and want to prioritize as a commissioner.
Deputy Harley Mccloskey, the question again, what issue would be your top priority as a city commissioner, and how would you address it?
My top priority would be around regionalism. We have citizens who live in one city and work in another. Many of us work and live and play all across this region. We have a university who draws from across this region and graduates of that institution and many others who are seeking employment across this region. I believe that we need to gather all of our resources together to create partnerships and collaborations to assist in this situation, but I think it needs to be driven by diverse citizen boards. Our citizens are very much involved in this region as employees, as parts of neighborhoods, and that they have that experience that they can drive solutions for the regionalism questions and situations that we need solved. We are an interdependent region. This Appalachian Highland, let's bring us together through citizen boards.
Thank you very much. Joe Wise, 1:15 to answer the question. What issue would be your top priority as a city commissioner, and how would you address it?
Well, first I'd like to just acknowledge the comments that preceded my answer. I agree, and that's why I think the current City Commission has sought to revisit the way we appoint to citizen boards so that we do it twice a year and in a collective format, so it's a more transparent process. We're taking applications for those boards right now for the appointments. It'll happen in January, so people interested in getting involved, go to the city website. Top priority is, I think, the priority that would have been before COVID too, and that's economic growth, particularly as it relates to attracting and retaining folks that we don't want to be losing talent to outside of our region. We need to be recruiting opportunities, and we need to be recruiting people. Our population as a region is shrinking, and that's something that needs to concern us all. And so I think part of the answer to that is harnessing our collective efforts, whether it be the chamber or the city or the university or the medical community, the JCDA. We need to be bringing those folks together and figuring out how, with our collective yet limited resources, we can be rowing the boat in the same direction to a successful end, which is recruit and retain.
All right, thank you. Kyle Beagle, you have 1:15 to answer the question. What issue would be your top priority as a city commissioner, and how would you address it?
Thank you. I think the top priority for me is economic equity for our region. I believe that our citizens deserve a sustainable wage in our area. I believe that protections and more efforts to invest in our small businesses is very important, especially during this pandemic. Helping with rent, which increases and decreases as they see fit, and I feel like creating more of a control with rent would help with a sustainable economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Todd Fowler, 1:15, and I'll repeat the question again. What issue would be your top priority as a city commissioner, and how would you address it?
I don't disagree with anything that's been said before, but I think we have a lot of projects going on in the city right now that we've been doing, but one of the things I would really like to focus on if I'm elected again would be the John Sevier Center in downtown. There are 150 families that are living in a high-rise that's not the best arrangement for them or for the city or for the fire department or for the medical people that have to call on them. We're working on finding a developer that could come and build suitable living quarters for all 150 of these families to move them somewhere where they'll have amenities and somewhere nicer and more accessible, and then getting someone to repurpose, redo the building downtown to make it nicer for the downtown area. So I think that would be one of my highest priorities.
Thank you, Dr. Fowler. Dr. Attorney Williams, minute 15, and I'll repeat the question just for equity's sake. What issue would be your top priority as a city commissioner, and how would you address it?
Yes, sir, I appreciate it. I think the most important responsibility of the city commission is fiscal responsibility. We have to maintain fiscal responsibility, and we have to do that by growth. Our population is shrinking. If we want to increase our income, we have to increase our tax base. We're losing young people to other communities where there are better job opportunities. So we have to grow our job opportunities in this location so young people can stay here. And then utilizing the increase in revenues that the city can garner by that growth, we have more opportunity to try to help the citizens of the community. So fiscal responsibility and growth would be my key priorities.
Okay, great. Dr. Williams, thank you very much. Mr. Murphy, you've heard the question 7 times by now, but I'm going to repeat it for this last time through. As a city commissioner, if elected, what issue would be your top priority, and how would you address it? Aaron T. Murphy.
Thank you. Top priority that I would deal with is economic recovery. You can't believe how many businesses we've lost, small businesses we've lost in our city. It breaks my heart. I want to work with those businesses to rethink business. When we had the pandemic hit, a lot of our smaller businesses didn't know what to do. A lot of restaurants and what have you who depend on customers to show up physically, they didn't know how to sell their product online. Restaurants didn't know how to do curbside pickup. So work with these businesses to have social media presence, website presence. With respect to economic recovery, work with existing businesses to be better equipped for future challenges. In addition to that, reallocate resources and workers from failed businesses and investments. So economic recovery. Thank you.
Aaron T. Murphy, thank you very much. And that's the first question. From here on out, candidates, I'm going to ask the question one time. And if you need the question repeated, then please ask, and I'll be happy to. But for the sake of time, I'll ask the question now. And a heads up, Jeff Clark, we're going to start with you this time through. Candidates are required by state statute to run as independent. Political parties are making it clear which of you here tonight they support and which they want to serve. Do you welcome the partisan involvement, or are you concerned about the partisan input in what has in the past been a fairly nonpartisan body of government, according to some? So that's the question, and I'll repeat it one more time. Candidates are required to run by state statute as independent. Political parties have made it clear which of you they support. Do you welcome the partisan involvement, or are you concerned about the partisan input in what has been a nonpartisan body of government? Again, if you need the question, I'll repeat it, but we'll start with you, Jeff Clark. Go ahead.
Yes,
Minute
thank you.
15.
Thank you for that question. I think it's important to note that that question is phrased poorly, because partisan politics has always been involved in every single race, no matter what it is, because that is how our country is run. It is a two-party system. So, of course, the party is going to inform their base who they support, even in nonpartisan races, and that has always been the case. I remember 2 years ago when I ran, I was endorsed then by the Democratic Party, and then one of my opponents, John Hunter, was endorsed by the Republican Party. That was not made a big stink then. It was considered normal. This year, there are 5 candidates up here who have ran for hold explicitly political positions within their parties. So I understand the need of nonpartisanship. I look forward to serving every resident of Johnson City to the best of my abilities, conservative and liberal alike. But I think it is frankly naive to expect that partisan politics are not going to be involved, because all politics.
Finish your sentence, please.
All politics is partisan to some extent.
Jeff Clark, thank you. Debbie Harley Mccloskey.
I believe that as a candidate, my values and my beliefs should be transparent to the voters. I believe they expect that. By the same token, I have taught at East Tennessee State University for 35 years. And I know that I am capable of leaving that partisanship in the hallway before I walk into a classroom, because I don't want anything to interfere with my students' ability to learn, or feel that I should carry any of that into that room with me. I am very capable of separating that. I believe that gridlock only happens when we're not willing to work. Well, I'm ready and willing to work, and I'm ready to roll my sleeves up to be part of a group that solves problems for our city. I don't believe our election laws need to be changed, and I wouldn't support any kind of effort to make that happen. Thank you.
Joe Wise.
Thank you. I guess I would first address this. My party affiliation has never been a secret. In fact, I'm the only person of the 8 candidates who has actually held elected public office as a Republican. But I make an important distinction in that if I were elected to another term on the city commission, I won't be a Republican city commissioner. I would be your city commissioner. I would be a city commissioner for all of Johnson City. I hear all politics is partisan and values and belief, and every city commission meeting comes with a 300, 400, 500, 600-page packet for the agenda, and I struggle to find anything in them that aligns neatly in any kind of partisan label. There are not Republican water lines and Democratic fire trucks, and I don't believe for one second injecting a dose of hyperpartisanship at City Hall is going to help one bit. City Hall doesn't need to look like Washington, D.C.
Call Beagle, a minute 15.
Thank you. As some other candidates have mentioned, partisan has always been in our politics, locally, state, federally. And it's always going to be here. So I think it's important that candidates are available to all the constituents multilaterally. But I also think it's just as important for each candidate to seek support and support from the party that aligns with their ideologies. And I believe that I'm very open with my beliefs, and I think that, as another candidate has mentioned, that I can set that aside to actually work for the citizens of Johnson City. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Fowler.
Yeah. I, too, agree that this should be nonpartisan. I don't think we should change that at all. I know that everybody's belief is their belief, and we probably are not going to change anyone's beliefs. But nothing that the city does or that we do in our commission meetings is anything partisan. We talk about water, sewer, roads, services for the people. Nothing has anything to do with what your other beliefs are. It's serving the citizens of Johnson City and making decisions about every citizen of Johnson City. So I believe we should keep it the way it is and be nonpartisan.
Fowler, thank you. Dr. Attorney Williams.
Thank you very much. I think it's been well stated already. It's hard to escape who you are when the same television station that interviews you is the county GOP chairman, and then the next is a nonpartisan debate. But I think that party politics absolutely needs to be left at the door. If you're picked to be a city commissioner, you're the commissioner for all the people of the city. And I certainly wouldn't have any difficulty in serving all the people, and certainly not just Republicans. I think anybody on this stage would likely be able to do the same. And I don't believe that any changes in state law are required to keep these type of positions nonpartisan. It just requires an effort on the part of the commissioners to make certain that it stays that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Aaron T. Murphy.
Yes, sir. I support nonpartisanship. I believe that when you have that in place, you can lead well without being influenced by secret groups or political bosses that you never see. When you have partisans involved, political parties, they pick your candidates. Here, for once in our city and throughout history, the city gets to pick their candidates. And so we need to represent the city of Johnson City. And when you can lead as a leader in character, integrity, and who you are and what experience you have, you can take the best interest of all people. And so nonpartisanship is extremely important when it comes to leadership in the city. Thank you.
Aaron T. Murphy, thank you. Alana Norwood.
As it's already been very clearly laid out by everyone else in this room, we are all on the same page about nonpartisanship, it sounds like. And my viewpoint is no different. So, I support it. I don't think that your political alignment or lack thereof, for that matter, should determine how we are assessing basic human rights and needs of the Johnson City residents and the community at large, for that matter. So, yeah, I may be a registered Democrat and I see D's next to my, candidates whenever I go vote, but if I don't support them and the way that they believe and the values that they hold and their policies, I'm not going to vote for them. And so I would hope that regardless of what letter may or may not be beside my name, whenever it's time to vote, that you guys will make the right choice based off of the facts and who I am and what I stand for. So it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican or Independent, Green Party, just go vote and make an informed decision. That's all we can really ask.
Alana Norwood, thank you. And thank you, candidates. That's question number 2. And now to question number 3. And it speaks to the issue of regional economic development called regionalism. Do you support a more regionalized effort for economic development? And if so, how do you believe Johnson City's government should balance regional and city-based efforts? Again, the question, do you support a more regionalized effort for economic development? If so, how do you believe Johnson City's government should balance regional and city-based efforts? Debbie Harley Mccloskey, you referred to this in your opening statements, and appropriately you get the question first,
Right.
according to the order we're going in tonight. So, a minute 15 on regionalism.
Great. I think that we have been directed by a recent consultant to focus on regionalism in terms of our economic development. I think it involves governments working together, city boards working together, chambers of commerce working together. It really is a region, the Appalachian Highlands. We have named it, put our stake in the ground, and we are joining together, and we need to put the processes and the infrastructure, if you will, around leadership and citizen involvement behind that effort. I'm not sure that has been as laid out as it should be, at least from a voter reading the paper and the media and trying to understand how it's all working. It's kind of invisible. I think it needs to be made more visible.
Thank you. Joe Wise. And again, if you need the question repeated, please let me know. I'll be happy to. Go ahead.
Sure. I think the thing you have to recognize with regionalism is how important our future stakes are in relation to our neighbors. We don't compete with Bristol or Kingsport. We compete with Dallas and Taipei. And so when we're making a case for economic relocations, we're making it to people who are looking at our region in comparison to lots of other places. And so to that end, the question asked, would you support regionalism? I'll do you one better. I have supported regionalism, specifically as it relates to a major investment in our airport in the aerospace park, which is a combination of industrial development and proximity to the airfield and proximity to Northeast State Technical Community College, where we can provide some job training and further economic development. What we're ultimately talking about doing is marketing our region to other parts of the world, and we all benefit in that. Now, the second part of this, as a city commissioner, I have a duty to the stakeholders and citizens of Johnson City. That's 100% my priority. But ultimately, we're looking for quality jobs and lower taxes so that we, as Johnson City, don't become known for our best export being our children and grandchildren when they graduate.
Joe Wise, thank you. Kyle Beagle.
Thank you. I do support regionalism, and I believe it's very important for our city government and our boards to work together and suggest new ideas, promote interconnected leadership, because after all, we are the Appalachian Highlands. So one example that I would suggest is bettering the transit system in our area to interconnect our different cities. So that way we can reach out to other jobs. So that way we create more economic opportunities for all of our citizens. Thank you.
Dr. Fowler.
I might have wanted to sit on the other side of Joe because we have a lot of the same statements and things, but I'll get my chance maybe here in a little bit. So regionalism is very important for us. We need to try and reach out and make inroads to work together. We have been doing that already. He mentioned the aerospace park that is out at Tri-Cities Airport. That was a regional group that got together. We all invested, and hopefully that will pay off for companies coming in and working here to bring more people, more jobs to our area. When the tide rises, all boats rise. So when Bristol does well, Kingsport does well, Johnson City does well, we all do well. When the Bristol race gets back to 100,000 plus people in the region, all of our restaurants are full, our hotels are full. It brings in tax money from people outside the region that does nothing but benefit everybody. So we should try and work with each other to make projects like that get us all to rise with the tide.
Dr. Tony Williams.
Yeah, no, I really agree with the others, and I think regionalism is important, although it's a difficult concept to communicate. I do hear concerns about regionalism when I've been out going door to door, and I think it's mostly because people don't understand the concept. I agree with Commissioner Wise that we're not really competing against Kingsport or Bristol. We're competing against other cities when we're looking for manufacturers or business to come to this location. And there's a lot of positives about Johnson City. I think we have more positives than Kingsport or Bristol, but I think we need to work together and recruit industry and individuals to come to this location. And when they come here, whether they move to Bristol or Kingsport or Johnson City, we all benefit. They shop in each other's cities, they dine in each other's cities, and the whole community benefits. So I'm a fan of regionalism, but we do need to do a better job of trying to explain it to the general population. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to repeat the question since we've been ironing out a technical issue right over your head during the middle of the last one. So Aaron T. Murphy, real quickly, do you support regionalized efforts for economic development? And if so, how do you believe Johnson City's government should balance regional and city-based efforts? Minute 15.
Thank you, Josh. I do support regionalism. When I think of regionalism, one word comes to my mind, and that's partnership. It's important that we work together, those who live beside us. Bristol's not our enemy. Kingsport's not our enemy. We are neighbors. But it's important that we not lose our identity as Johnson Cityans. It's important that we keep the best interest of the citizens of this great city. So I'm in great support of regionalism. I believe that we should build on prior success, strengthen existing relationships while creating new ones. Thank you.
Thank you. To you, Alana Norwood, about regionalism, a minute 15.
I also support regionalism from a personal standpoint. I moved to Johnson City from Elizabethton, so I'm a regional citizen. We'll play on words, it's not exactly what it means, but as other candidates have stated, regionalism is essential for economic development, but touching more so on how are we going to ensure that economic development and growth doesn't come before the needs and the concerns of Johnson Cityans. I think that's really how we should start to tackle and explain regionalism. So whenever it has to deal with somebody personally, they kind of understand it a little bit more, instead of hitting it at like a numbers and a businessy kind of standpoint. You go visit your neighbor in Kingsport, you grab a bite to eat, that's regionalism. You know, you invite them over to your barbecue and they buy some groceries at our local store, that's regionalism. So I don't think it's really that difficult of a concept to grasp or explain to people whenever you make it about people.
And Jeff Clark.
Thank you. Regionalism has been a buzzword for both of the races that I have been in for City Commission thus far. It's a fascinating one because all it really means is cooperation amongst neighbors, which is Appalachia, right? Appalachia roots are baked into are baked with regionalism. We care about our neighbors. If our neighbors need a cup of flour to finish their bread that they're making, we would provide it if we have it, right? And so it very much makes sense to support regionalism in that regard. But you know, we are elected for the citizens of Johnson City, and so their priorities come first. But understanding that we are not enemies to the county, to our neighboring cities, to even the cities on the outskirts of our region, that's very important because when they are better, we are better.
Jeff Clark, thank you, and thank you, candidates. That's question number 2. And question number 3, actually. And now to question number 4, Joe Wise, this will be yours to tackle first. What is the biggest budgetary challenge currently facing the city of Johnson City and over the next 4 years? Again, the question, what is the biggest budgetary challenge facing the city in the next 4 years? Joe Wise, you're first, a minute 15, and we'll move in this direction.
There's never enough money. In summary, there's never enough. I mean, that's a question in 4 years on the city commission. That's always the balancing act between various priorities and competing priorities. You know, right now, probably the most pressing capital project needs that we have are centered in our school system. You know, we have a school board and school system that has identified the need for 2 middle schools, moving 5th grade back down to the elementary schools in an effort to deal with our growing student population. In order to do that, we need to get Liberty Bell and Indian Trail up to a capacity and then add capacity at a number of elementary schools. We're in the middle of doing that. You see that in a soon-to-be dedicated Liberty Bell gym and cafeteria, but there is still more to be done. In addition to that, I would also say West Walnut Street presents unique opportunities of which I have been personally involved. And what makes West Walnut Street appealing is its double impact. The public investment can drive and incentivize private investment to achieve a higher and greater purpose on that corridor, which generates more revenue, which gives us the resources to do the things we're talking about. And I think that's our opportunity.
Joe Wise, thank you very much. Kyle Beagle, a minute 15. Biggest budgetary challenge facing the city in the next 4 years?
I think the biggest challenge we have with the budget is that we aren't focusing our funding on the correct things. If you look at the budget, we're spending millions of dollars on golf when we could be spending millions of dollars on increasing funding for education and some of these bigger development programs for our community. We did not spend enough money for our development programs this past year, and I think that we could spend a lot more on all of that, including education, especially during this new time, this new territory that we're trekking through. I think that increasing funding for our education and providing our kids with the proper education, or technology, my bad, proper technology and internet access would be precedent. Thank you.
Dr. Fowler.
I think the biggest budgetary challenge, I agree with Joe Wise, is our schools, because we've got schools that need to be improved for safety, security reasons. We've got schools that need to be enlarged, and we've got schools that need to be built. And all of those things you can budget, but you never know what else is going to come up. We have bond money that we borrow money and we pay it off over time, but it may be 2025 before a large amount of that comes off to use. So in the next 4 years, we're not getting that bond money back. So what are we going to do in between then? So It's a question of raising taxes or redistributing money from one place to another, or increasing our tax base by having more businesses come in town, more visitors to our town, and it's hard during COVID. It was hard to do a budget this year when you knew nothing about what was going to come in, and then trying to budget for next year when we don't know what we're going to get this year. So I'm hoping, praying that we don't have another COVID kind of thing to worry about next year, because it's going to make a budget harder again. But schools are number one on my list.
Thank you, Dr. Fowler. Dr. Williams.
Yes, thank you. Again, I believe that fiscal responsibility and growth are going to be the key to helping us with our biggest financial responsibility, which is going to be our education and schools. For capital expenditures, expanding and repurposing some schools is going to cost us a lot of money. And so we need to look at the budget and make sure what our priorities are and establish what programs have worked, what has not worked, what's not cost effective, and we have to have growth in order to get the funds in order to grow our schools. So I think ultimately I agree with the other commissioners that new schools and remodeling schools are going to be the biggest issues that we're going to face in the next 4 to 6 years.
Aaron T. Murphy, the question again, biggest budgetary challenge facing the city in the next 4 years?
Well, Josh, you and I know that people are the greatest resource of every community. If we don't have the right people leading, then there's no community. We got a good number of our department leaders in our city that will be retiring within the next 4 years. We don't pay a lot. We got one of the lowest paid city managers in the Tri-Cities. What about the rest of the department leaders that will be leaving soon? And so our payroll is going to increase because those coming out of school, they want way more money and they're offering less experience. So that's something we have to look at, how we're going to staff properly our city team, knowing that a good number of them will be retiring soon.
Mr. Murphy, thank you very much. Alana Norwood.
Could you repeat the question for me one more time?
Sure,
I know I've
absolutely.
heard it 8 times. But
No problem. What is the biggest budgetary challenge that you believe is facing Johnson City in the next 4 years?
So as it's been previously stated, it's just like very uncertain times right now. Like we don't really know what's going to happen, but I think really that's kind of how it is anyways, regardless of if we're in the middle of a pandemic or not. There's always going to be unexpected challenges that arise. However, with that being said, I think we need to go in looking at a budget saying, regardless of what happens, this is where we're going to put our money because this is what we value in our city. And this is what our constituents have said to us that they need to be better and to live their lives and things to be easier for them. I'm not doing this job for me. I'm not doing it for money. I thought it was a volunteer position. I didn't even know there was any type of pay for doing this kind of thing. So I think ultimately where we budget and how much money we put in particular places, it is a direct reflection of our values and how much we value a certain department over another. So you put your money where your mouth is, and I'm down to invest in educational opportunities, not just for the youth, but also for people that are aging, because I believe as an academic at heart, the world is our classroom and we should never stop learning.
Thank you, Ms. Norwood. Jeff Clark.
Yeah, I think our biggest budgetary challenge is ensuring that it stays balanced while fully funding important things like the fire department and our education department. And while people think that that's what fiscal responsibility means, that is typically code for for cutting jobs and for making, for instance, I found out yesterday that our fire crews, they're supposed to have 4 people on by national regulations. We currently keep 3 firemen per truck, which means instead of being able to go into a building as soon as they get there, they have to wait on another truck from another station to get there before they can go in and save someone. That's not fiscal responsibility, that's morally reprehensible. That's a life that could be saved if we just decided to spend more money there as opposed to elsewhere, such as on golf, which benefits very few people.
Mr. Clark, thank you. Deputy Harley Mccloskey.
This is a hard question, but since you limited it to capital expenditures, I will choose our schools. Johnson City schools are a point of pride for this community, and as an educator, I believe fully and I am committed to supporting education. Our voters, however, are going to need a little bit of persuasion and probably some influence and help, because they've been very disappointed by our local county government and funds that came this direction to support some of these capital improvements that we should have had funds for. So as we try to persuade and as we reallocate and as we prepare budgets and possibly approach tax rates, there's going to need to be some education and some openness to this process so that they'll understand and they'll come on board, or we're not going to be able to get what we need to have for our schools.
Thank you, candidates. That was question number 4, and now to question number 5. And we are, as I mentioned, going to switch up the order now a little bit. We're going to jump to the end, and Aaron T. Murphy, you're going to take this question now, and we're going to move in this direction, all right? So the next question is regarding race relations in the city of Johnson City. And the question is, please assess race relations in the community and within city government, including the city's response to public protests earlier this year. Again, the question, please assess race relations in the community, our community here in Johnson City, and within city government, including the city's response to public protests earlier this year. We'll have 1:15 per answer, and Aaron T. Murphy, we're going to start with you.
Well, with respect to the recent protests, I did receive a phone call from our police chief who was concerned that we had individuals and groups protesting the station. And so he and I got together and we led prayer on the steps of the Johnson City Police Department. We called the city to unity. I've seen our mayor come out and walk with those who were hurting, who needed to be heard. I believe that our city has stepped up and did the best that they could have done at that time. However, we need ongoing conversations. We need to be willing to listen and also willing to understand both sides, because everyone has their experience. And so I believe that we have some good things in place and we need to build on that success when it comes to race relations. Thank you.
Aaron T. Murphy, thank you. Dr. Tony Williams.
Thank you, sir. Intrinsically, I don't believe that Johnson City is a racist community. I know there are issues, and the issues need to be discussed, and we need to work together. I'm a huge supporter of the right to protest. It needs to be peaceful and orderly and not interfere with other individuals' rights. But I think the city handled the protests well. I think our police department is way ahead of the curve on community policing and has done a very good job. So I applaud the city's efforts at interacting with the individuals that were protesting. And it's a difficult situation without a perfect answer. But overall, I think the city did a good job, and I think that the police did a good job. And restraint was shown, and I would anticipate that restraint will be shown again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Todd Fowler.
I've lived here for 27 years, and I think we do a pretty good job with getting along in our town. I know we can always do better. There are always people that will do things that we do not appreciate and don't want really to happen in our town, and we'll keep trying to make that not the most common thing that we see. I believe the city allowed the peaceful protests. They started at City Hall. There were a lot of people that participated, and as long as they were peaceful, everything was great and they were allowed, and I think that should be. I think peaceful protests are a way to get what you think across, and I think we should keep allowing that. I think our police training here is very good. It can always be better. We already have a hard time recruiting police people to come and work here. We've been 16 policemen down for the last year, and we train people, and we have more that are retiring than we're recruiting in. So we've got a lot to do as far as recruiting police and training, but I do think it's a great place to live, and I'd like it to keep getting better.
Dr. Fowler. Kyle Beagle.
I'd like to point out the fact that it's very important that we have leaders who actually acknowledge the social disparities, the racial disparities that our city and our country is facing. I have friends abroad who have actually acknowledged the racial disparities that we face here. And if they can do it, then our city leaders can do it as well. It's been shown in recent protests that our leaders have failed to acknowledge it, and instead of standing with us, they stood against the protest, they turned their heads. And so it's important that we have leaders who actually listen and will allow an open discussion and actually actively work to mend any social disparities, any racial disparities or economic disparities that affect our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Wise.
I would, I guess, start by saying I have to recognize that we all have lenses through which we see the world, and my lens is different from others on this panel. And so I may be looking at the same truth you're looking at, but I'm looking at it through a different lens. And so to that end, I think no one can look at our society and see that in every respect there is an equality of outcome or opportunities. Having said that, I think the solution is ultimately that opportunity is the great equalizer. Opportunity for healthcare, opportunity for education, opportunity for economic opportunity, those opportunities. And one example of that I would point to as the city is our early development index, where we're working in partnership with the First Tennessee Development District to look at preschool age children as they come to kindergarten, to figure out where is a community, what neighborhoods our students are doing well in and where they're underperforming, and then look at what resources we have in those communities to match those resources up to deficiencies, because ultimately our goal should be for all of our citizens to lead healthy and productive lives.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the question again. Please assess race relations in the community and within city government, including the city's response to public protests earlier this year.
I think the city did a good job of supporting the protests that were happening in our community. I was able to participate in some. But I also think that this idea of racism is a frightening word, and people don't want to feel that that's part of them. But sadly, it is part of all of us, because we don't know each other's stories. We don't know what other people have experienced. And I think that the opportunity here is to learn about each other's stories. As those have been shared, community has grown. And the freedom fighters have played a big role in that, and I applaud their existence and would like to see their sustainability as an organization. I think it's more than the police department that needs some training along these lines. I think it's everyone in the city, everyone in government, everyone across the board could use some training in understanding and learning each other's stories.
Thank you. Jeff Clark.
Thank you. First, I want to start by saying Black Lives Matter. And I want to say this because it's not that all other lives don't matter. It's that all lives can't matter until Black lives do matter. Secondly, I want to point out that even Martin Luther King, a great proponent of peaceful protest, stated that violence is the language of the unheard. So we have to understand that when people get unruly and what we see as non-peaceful protest, that is because they feel that they are not being heard. And we have to be the bigger, compassionate person when we are elected leadership and be willing to listen to them every time. And I want to do that. I also want to point out that over the last few months, I have worked with a lot of the protest groups in this area, specifically with the New Panther Initiative, in both their protesting and in their community outreach, where they have given food and aid to people who are hungry and need it. These groups aren't just violent thugs. They're people who care about their community, and that's why they're doing what they're doing.
Clark, thank you. And Alana Norwood.
So to address specifically the city's response to peaceful protesters, overall, I would say it was decent at best. I directly faced backlash from being a peaceful protester following the law and was surrounded by people in full-blown riot gear and was actually threatened with tear gas. And whenever I was told to evacuate from the sidewalks and people that were spilling over into the streets, there was SWAT on the other side of us and the National Guard on the other end. So it's like, where do we even go from here? I am running for Johnson City Commission because I was asked time and time again by poor white people, poor black people, small business owners of both races, and they said that they need to see leadership that looks like the people of Johnson City. I'm a biracial woman who identifies as Afro-Latino. I have an afro, and I was born in Appalachia, and it just makes sense to me. So, as your next city commissioner, I promise you, if you have issues, I will do my very best to address them, regardless of what you look like or how you identify with the socially constructed idea of race.
Norwood, thank you. And candidates, thank you for answering that question. We're now going to shift gears and we're going to talk about development. Here's the question, and Dr. Williams, a heads up, you'll be the one taking this one first. What do you think the city's role should be when it comes to redevelopment in Boone's Creek, on West Walnut, in the corridor, and downtown? Again, what do you think the city's role should be when it comes to redevelopment in Boone's Creek, West Walnut, the West Walnut Street corridor, and in the downtown area? Dr. Attorney Williams, you're first up with this one. You have 1 minute, 15 seconds.
Thank you very much. A lot to cover in 1 minute and 15. I think the city's role in many of those issues is that of a facilitator. Certainly the downtown development has been dramatically aided by actions of prior city commissioners as far as flood control, and I think the downtown area is going through a renaissance and will be a site for tourism and young professionals. I'm a big fan of the West Walnut development, and I think that that'll help link and improve access to the university in downtown and be a net benefit to the city as a whole, and so I strongly encourage that. And I think the sitting commissioners have done a good job with West Walnut development. The Boones Creek development is an interesting issue. I wish it had had a little bit more time to be developed and presented to the city than the manner in which it was done. Overall, I think it is more likely than not to be a positive outcome, but the jury is out on that yet, and it depends on how it's accomplished.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Todd Fowler.
I think the development is great that's going to happen in Boones Creek. I think it's a great way, having a way to use tax money in the future to attract and not having to tax the new businesses coming in. But the key to Boones Creek is making sure they are new businesses and not taking away from downtown, not taking away from the mall, making sure there are new things coming in that will increase our tax base in the city. The West Walnut development would be a wonderful connection between ETSU and downtown. I can envision trolleys going between ETSU and downtown, dropping people off along West Walnut and downtown, parking at ETSU, parking downtown, and being able to go back and forth through this whole area with new restaurants and businesses. So it is a great vision to do. Again, I think anything that we do needs to attract new businesses to this area and not take away. We need to support our mall because it's one of the biggest tax bringing in things for us. And so that's important to make sure we don't take away from that as we're developing these other areas.
Dr. Fowler, thank you. Kyle Beagle.
Thank you. I think these developments around our area is very important. I think it actually helps build up our area, especially with more businesses coming in, the expansion of our local businesses. And as others have mentioned, the West Walnut development has or will be able to connect our ETSU campus to downtown, increasing more opportunity to bring in more revenue. And I think it's a great job, and I think our commissioners have done a good job at guiding this and making sure it happens right. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Wise.
I think your question was about the role of the city government.
That's correct.
In those three. And I think that's where it's really important to make a distinction. Each of these is a very different kind of development project. And so the city's role would be very different in each of them. When you're looking at downtown or West Walnut Street, the economics of development don't favor those being redeveloped as easily. It's far easier to go buy a couple acres of undeveloped green land and do what you need to do. There are fewer surprises, there's not asbestos, there's not environmental concerns, and so the first thing that we have to look at is that's where things like the redevelopment district and TIF can become useful tools, because you're able to say, hey, we realize this isn't as appealing a place to put your millions of dollars of investment dollar, but at the same time we kind of can't abandon downtown, or we can't abandon Walnut Street. Remember, Walnut Street was an industrial corridor. And so the city's role there is vastly different than it is in Boone's Creek. In Boone's Creek, what we have is really the state driving the incentives out there, and the interchange is a significant part of that. So it's really recognizing you have different tools in your toolbox to achieve different outcomes, and knowing the difference between them and how to apply them matters.
Joe Wise, thank you. Debbie Harley Mccloskey, and again, if the question needs repeating, I'm happy to do it.
This is a role that I want to call balance. We have, as already stated, needing different tools for different areas, but the main focus for these three particular areas are really around economic development, which we need, no question asked. But I feel like we have neighborhoods in this community, in this city, who feel ignored. I feel that we have neighborhoods that have issues. I've seen plans from 6 of them that are even posted on the city website that talk about needs related to water and sewer and sidewalks and some crime prevention and some other kinds of things. I would just like us as a city to balance our work in economic development with the needs of neighborhoods. People want to feel proud of their city and their neighborhood and where they live, and the city should help make some of that happen.
Thank you. Jeff Clark.
So I think the number one priority of the city for what to do with these developments is to ensure that we are bringing up business there, not bringing in business. Because when we bring up new businesses from our own entrepreneurial base here in Johnson City, whether it be new students from ETSU who just graduated, have a great idea and want to get a business started, or it's someone who's been working for themselves out of their home, we can give them an opportunity to get a brick and mortar establishment in these places as we're redeveloping them, as we're growing them, so that that money stays here. It will both bring in taxes through, property tax on their business, but also on the property tax of the owner of that company's, their own home. And that allows the money to stay here and recirculate in here, as opposed to when you bring in retail developments. That money typically goes to some CEO that lives in St. Louis, Missouri, as opposed to staying here in Johnson City where it belongs.
Clark, thank you. Ms. Norwood.
So my answer is essentially a combination between what Ms. Debbie and Mr. Jeff Clark have said. So essentially, I think the most important role that a commissioner plays whenever looking at developments across the city is a balancing act, because on the one hand we do need economic growth. That's so important for a city. but in order to achieve economic growth, it looks like investing in the people. And so whenever we're embarking on new developments, the first question that comes to my mind, now, I'm no accountant or an economist, I'm not going to act like I am, but the first thing that comes to my mind is the people. Who's going to be displaced by the extension of a highway, or are people going to be able to sleep at night because there's a highway right near their house, even if they are able to stay in the area? And so I think we have to look at who directly benefits and who is going to, pay the higher price of, a little bit of discomfort, or maybe even like completely losing the area that they used to live at. So developments are good, but they also have their downsides as well, and we have to look at the role of the people as well.
Ms. Norwood, thank you very much. Aaron T. Murphy, your response, a minute 15.
Yes, sir. I believe the city's role with respect to this new development in Boones Creek and West Walnut is to be sure to over-communicate to our community as to what's taking place. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they miss the press release. We need to support, I'm looking at Bob right now, make sure we fund and support the Chamber of Commerce so that they can help create opportunities for new businesses. Johnson City is a place where dreams come true, where you can live the American dream. I've got many friends who've started businesses here, and they're doing well. And so we need to communicate more with our citizens, get input from our citizens, make sure we collaborate between the new development projects and also the other areas that offer services and entertainment, and not neglect them, and then pay attention to other areas in the city that do need attention as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, thank you very much. And by my calculation, all of you have answered that question. So we're going to move on to the next one. And Dr. Fowler, you're going to tackle this one first. And again, this is another topic that some of you touched on already. So what I'm going to ask you to do in this one is to go beyond your previous answers and get specific. And it's regarding to money and budget allocations and public schools. If elected to the Johnson City Board of Commission, what specifically could voters expect of you as it pertains to city budget allocations for public education? So again, if elected, what could voters expect from you, as specific as you can be, as it pertains to city budget allocations, the use of public dollars for public education in the city? Dr. Fowler, we're going to start with you. We'll move in this direction in minute 15.
Again, we would love to spend as much money as we can on schools, but budgetary restraints are budgetary restraints. Our goal is to get as much of our county tax money for schools from the county to help pay for our schools. Our city tax money, we pay county taxes when we live in the city. That tax money is supposed to go for all the schools in the county, including the city schools. So we need to work on making sure we can get as much of that tax money as we can to pay for our schools, in addition to what we are budgeting to pay for our schools. And I will continue to try and get as much as I can of our tax money to do that, and make sure our bond money can be spent for schools to make sure all our kids in every area are getting the schools that they deserve. And we're working toward 2 middle schools and budgeting for that second middle school, and we will push as hard as we can to get that done as soon as we can.
So thank you. Carl Beagle.
Thank you. I think, as I said previously, that we need to prioritize our funding in our budget. We've spent millions on golf. That doesn't help but just a minority of people. When we could just reallocate these fundings, or the majority of this funding, to our education, helping provide technology for students, which would in turn help with our environment, doing away with paper, providing tablets, Chromebooks, laptops, hotspots, so kids can access internet even when they don't have access at home. Also creating better wages for our educators in our area to create competition, to keep good educators in our area. I think that's a very important part. But I think my main point would be on technology and helping the students so they can actually achieve the education they deserve. Thank you.
Joe Wise.
This is not a 75-second question.
best, Mr. Wise.
So let's just be honest with that right out of the gate. I think one of the things that we need to recognize is that as a city, we've made a decision to have a city school system. The primary responsibility of educating students in the state of Tennessee falls to counties. Municipalities have, in many cases, elected to create their own city system and augment that state and county funding to enhance up their system. And so we have done that. Now, I've heard some things said here about millions of dollars on golf. We have an $800,000 a year budget for golf. We have a $400,000 a year budget for golf revenue. The $400,000 we spend on golf, the last time I was at Pine Oaks, I couldn't find a rich guy. I went looking because it was the Greenville High School golf team playing the Science Hill High School golf team. And so municipal golf is not some playground of the rich. It's a part of our educational program. And so as you look at money and budget, I hear talk of technology and computing. We've spent millions of dollars this year just out of CARES money for students to have the very resources that are being talked about.
Thank you. Debbie Harley Mccloskey.
Well, as an educator, I know that there are needs for bricks and mortar when it comes to schools. But I know that the one thing that makes the biggest difference in education are the teachers. And I would like to see us, as budgets can be reallocated, reorganized, put money into salaries for teachers. That's how we keep the best ones. There were state promises for teacher raises that didn't come through. Our teachers are working double time, teaching both online and on ground. And believe me, as someone who teaches online and on ground, I understand the kind of work that they're putting in. I also know that having internet access is a problem. I know students who can't get internet at home. Parents can't afford it. And you know, we have our franchisees who can take 2, 3, 4 weeks just to connect a house. That's not good. We have to do something about controlling our franchisees.
Thank you. Jeff Clark.
Yeah, so when I went to school, I didn't live in the city until I was 18. I graduated from Daniel Boone High School, and we all knew the best high school in the county was Science Hill. And I want to keep it that way. But that means that we have to keep our teachers teaching. And that means that we can't have them poached from outside. I want to raise our teachers' salaries to meet the national average. I also want to give them career opportunities that allows them to advance while still staying in classrooms. The only advancement opportunity for most teachers is to go into administration. And that's great, that leads to great principles, but that means we also lose valuable experience in the classroom. If you go to my website, I have it more laid out here than I can in 75 seconds, but there are programs available in the education field that, through certification processes and such, allow for teachers to gain raises and certifications that would keep them teaching while still advancing their career path and giving them more money in their pocket at the end of the day.
Clark, thank you. Ms. Norwood.
As I stated previously, I'm an academic at heart, and I believe that the world is a classroom. However, real classrooms are a thing, and there's students that are actively trying to learn online. And as a college student that had to finish out my degree online, it was really difficult for not only me as a student, but for my professors and their families. Like, it just was a spider web of difficulties trying to transition into this virtual hybrid kind of learning format. So yeah, our teachers deserve more money. I distinctly remember being in elementary school and annoying the crap out of my teachers, just, you know, talking to them because I respected them so much. Like, I spent the majority of my day with my teachers, and they taught me everything that I know right now for the most part. And so yes, absolutely, raise their salaries. They're overworked and underpaid, and especially right now. And then I think secondly, for the students, especially in Johnson City. We have a diverse population, and our faculty and staff do not represent that. Statistically speaking, when a student sees and has a teacher that looks like them, like me, they do better long term. So,
Thank you, Ms. Norwood. Aaron T. Murphy.
Will you please repeat the question?
I'd be happy to, sir. Yes. If elected, what could voters, and I'm adding the words here specifically since we've talked about education prior, what could they expect of you specifically as it pertains to city budget allocations for public schools?
Josh, teachers have a special place in my heart. My mom was an educator for years, so was my mother-in-law. There's no substitute for education. We have to take good care of our teachers. We need to make sure that they're paid well. They have benefits after their time is up. We need to make sure that resources are available. Not all our families have internet. And that's disheartening. And so, knowing that some of our students are involved in remote learning, we also have to be aware that parents are part of the education system and making sure that our parents are educated as well because they're part of the big piece. And so again, we need to take care of teachers and make sure they have the resources they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Dr. Williams.
Extraordinary complex issues. I've heard from all of the candidates on various subjects, all of which ultimately require funding. My little sister is a retired teacher. I have another little sister who's a retired police officer. I think the teachers, police, firemen should be the rock stars of the community and need to be well reimbursed and absolutely need to be respected. All of those things take resources. And the only way to get those resources is to grow the community. I believe the City Commission needs to look at the fundamentals, and it's about water and sewer and electricity and safety. But I think somewhere in there we're probably going to have to throw in access to high-speed internet. We have many students at home that really are not able to access the internet, and there's no way for them to do remote learning without reasonable speed internet at their house. So I think there's a ton of issues that we need to address. They almost all involve money, and the only way to get more money is either raise taxes, which is extraordinarily unpopular, or to grow our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And we are now at our final question for the evening, and I know that makes you all sad, but let's plow forward ahead. And this is a question that will go to you, Mr. Beagle, and then we'll move in this direction. And it is regarding efforts by the Commission to make our city more livable. What are the areas that you think are most important in making Johnson City a livable community that will entice people and businesses to move here? So what are the areas that you think are the most important in making Johnson City a livable community that entice people and businesses to move here? This is our final question. You have 1 minute, 15 seconds. And Mr. Beagle, will begin with you.
Thank you. I think the priority here is a sustainable economy, really, for our region. Growing our economy from within with the local businesses that we have, utilizing tools and assets that our city government has available to them to help our small businesses grow. Some of the challenges that our small businesses are having are not being able to do the market research or the competitor intelligence, industry trend work, or even media access. And having access to this is very important, especially with big businesses already having these tools available to them. You have small businesses who are just doing they're doing as good as they can just to make, sell, and get the product out the door. So I think growing our local businesses and increasing our wages here in our area for our citizens is very important. Controlling rent costs so that way our people can afford good housing. I think those are the priorities here.
Thank you, Mr. Beagle. Joe Wise.
I think the first thing is city's role is to be a reliable partner and provider of its services. You know, when city government does what city government's expected to do, people don't notice. It's really kind of boring, right? It's only when the water starts poisoning the citizens that people begin to pay attention to whether city government has fallen down on the job. And so I think the first thing is just to be a reliable partner. The second thing is, I think, to look at the quality of infrastructure and public amenities, and we've certainly made a commitment to that. If you look downtown, we have 2 stormwater abatement strategies disguised as vast public parks. You'd not know that what they really exist for is to keep downtown from flooding. And so I think part of that is a city that is creative in looking for what is next and what is possible. And so I think that's certainly a part of it. Along those lines are a commitment to realizing a change in our workforce, and specifically the entrance of Bright Ridge as an energy authority to deliver 10 gig internet. That was made possible by a vote of this city commission under great pressure from high-powered industry lobbyists who wanted to keep the franchisees in power.
Mr. Wise, thank you. Debbie Mccloskey.
A livable community requires a lot of factors. My academic says draw on Maslow, you know, the basics of needs, a living wage to have decent housing, a responsive city to community needs, to what the people need. But we also need to be empowering and supportive and embracing of diverse voices. We are home to a vast community of individuals who live, love, worship, look, and identify in very diverse ways. And our employment, our recreation, our people, our infrastructure of people and services and organizations must embrace all of that. And if not, that's part of why we have a brain drain. We have our young people leaving because they don't feel that this is a community that wants a diverse population to be successful. We have to change that.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, you have a minute 15.
It's a lot in a minute 15. It's been a lot in a lot of minute 15s.
Yes, it is.
There's 2 big things that come to my mind to make a city more livable. The first is the environment in which that city is. I'm not originally from this area. My father grew up in Telford, and by happenstance, I ended up back in this area where my family comes from. But I fell in love with it for the environment that I found surrounding me. I grew up in the suburbs of DC, and I didn't have my first breath until I was 12 and I moved to Sulphur Springs. That fresh air is what makes this city such a livable environment for so many people. And it draws so many people in. And I want to protect that as much as we can by ensuring that we keep green energy as a priority, by helping retrofit buildings to be greener and to bring more sustainable forms of infrastructure to our environment. The other thing that makes a city livable is how much money the person makes here, and that's a livable wage. And so one of the things that I support is city employees being paid a minimum wage of $15 an hour, because while we cannot enforce minimum wage in our city due to state regulations, we can make certain our city employees have a livable wage.
Mr. Clark. Ms. Norwood.
Once again, Debbie, we are so aligned tonight. I'm telling you, she's a rock star, but that's enough about how great Debbie is. A livable city, as she said, looks like addressing our basic needs: food, shelter, water, you know, all those good things that a lot of us probably take advantage of. I know I do at times. And as Jeff said, keeping our area clean and beautiful. You know, not only is that going to make it more livable for us, but it's also going to drive tourism and economic development that we are all so fond of. And lastly, which I don't think really it's been touched on, but I think opening up the lines of communication and allowing our citizens and constituents to feel as if their voices are actually being heard, and not just heard, but their concerns are going to have some type of transformative solution that follows, and not a solution that looks like research that's going to take years and lots of funding. Like, we need to come up with creative solutions that create tangible results in like a decent time frame. So I think that's what makes livable cities.
Thank you, Ms. Norwood. Aaron T. Murphy.
Will you please repeat the question?
Absolutely. What are the areas that you think are most important in making Johnson City a livable community that entice people and businesses to move here?
2 months ago, Josh, I received a new next-door neighbor. And what's interesting about this next-door neighbor, he works from home. This pandemic brought to us a reality of remote workers. And if we're going to be a city that cultivates that, incubates those kinds of workers, we need a better infrastructure with respect to internet. We need fiber optics in lieu of cable. If we have fiber optics, we can create an infrastructure that we can recruit remote workers all over the country. Thank you.
And T. Murphy, thank you. And Dr. Tony Williams.
I think the City Commission, under the leadership of the incumbent commissioners, have actually accomplished a lot over the last 4 years. I think stability of the city government is very important. When businesses or individuals are looking to relocate, sometimes they want to go to a place where the environment is stable and the absence of friction and all parties that are getting along and listening to each other is extraordinarily important. So I think working together and promoting each other is extremely important. I agree with Aaron that ultimately high-speed internet access, which is coming and they're working on it, is going to be extraordinarily important to recruit remote workers. And I'll reiterate that I think it could be very helpful for helping educate our students who are trying to learn from home. But a stable environment, we have many amenities, and I think that I would continue to promote those amenities to the outside world, best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And Dr. Todd Fowler.
And livability in 75 seconds. I will try. Economics, quality of life, and infrastructure are the things we need to have. So that's supporting our businesses, recruiting new businesses, cultivating entrepreneurs to develop businesses, workforce-ready citizens we need to make sure we have, talent retention, not losing as many, the brain drain, new professionals, remote workers, talking about that, bringing them in, leverage our natural assets that we have. We need to continue our development. We need family-friendly activities, outdoor amenities like Tannery Knob, Tweetsy, continue developing those. We need a mix of housing options for different people coming in, different levels of new homes for people that can afford all types of homes. We need services that support working families. We need broadband access. We need to continue to invest in our infrastructure like sewers, stormwaters, and sidewalks. And we need to keep supporting our best-in-class education system that we have. I think we're doing all of those, but we can do it better, and we've got a lot of work to do, but we're making it more livable every day. Thanks.
Dr. Fowler, thank you. And I do believe we've all answered all the questions. And we want to say thank you to all of you, the commission candidates who are here tonight. We've done a pretty good job. We're only a little bit past 10 o'clock. I want to say thank you for your willingness to stand up and serve our community and to do the hard thing, which is to go serve on a city commission and say I'd be willing to serve. Personally, I want to thank you for your patience with me as we manage this format in a socially distanced way. And a specific apology to Aaron T. Murphy, who became the victim of a failing man's panic over his lack of vision at a distance, so forgive me for that. I want to say thank you to the WJHL team who's here tonight. Mike Creamer, our production manager, Brandon Stevens, our director, Chris Greer, our chief videographer, Britt Stack, our assistant news director, the whole team at WJHL TV who's making this possible, and at WJHL.com. Thank you, Bob Cantler, and to the Johnson City Chamber for your willingness to be here and to use your resources to provide what is nothing more than a community service. And to do it at 10 o'clock at night. Thank you very much. And to audience, in a socially distanced way, thank you all. To you, the viewer, we appreciate you being here. This broadcast will live in perpetuity on WJHL's social media platforms. We invite you to share it and to help educate those who did not watch tonight as we move toward November 3rd, Election Day. I'm Josh Smith for all of us here at this candidate forum in Johnson City. Thank you for watching, and good night.